Good morning, guys, and welcome to our weekly webinar. I'm really glad to be back. I missed you guys over the past couple of weeks. I wasn't feeling too well, but back in the grind again. Today, as usual, when I'm around, I like to delve into more technical type topics. And today we're going to get very technical, and we're going to be discussing some major aspects of software development. Basically, I'm going to be giving you a roadmap for most of your careers in software development. But before I go there, I just want to talk about artificial intelligence and software development, because that is a very relevant topic these days. There's a lot of fear mongering out there. Even high-ranking people, I think they are just being irresponsible. There was a statement made by the CEO of NVIDIA not long ago that there's not going to be a need for software developers because of AI. And I think that's utter nonsense. That is utter nonsense, because in some people's minds, they believe that AI is going to magically create software for clients. You know, it's as if business people have all the time to sit and prompt AI to develop systems for them. It's not like that. It's never going to be like that. As much as I am a software engineer myself, I run a business and I don't have time to go and focus on every part of my business. And I have the right people to do that. I have instructional designers, I have video editors, I have coders, I have web designers. These people manage all of that for me. Now, how they manage it is up to them. Whether they're using AI or not is up to them. I just have to make sure that everybody's doing their jobs and the business is meeting its objective targets. And so this whole idea of AI going to develop software for me, I don't ever see that happening, because I don't have the time for that. I don't have time to do the analysis. I give my requirements to a developer, and the developer needs to unpack my requirements and develop a system for me, or firstly, to design a system for me that will suit my needs, get my approval, and then go and develop that system. And I don't think AI is going to be able to do that without some human intervention. So you guys shouldn't worry about all this talk about AI and the development world, because it's just some people being over enthusiastic. The other thing is, do you think that in the future, all software is going to be developed by AI, and it's going to be so black boxed, so closed off, that nobody is going to know or is going to need to know what's going on inside there, where the data is moving and where it's being transferred? I think that's utter nonsense. It's never going to be a situation like that. We are going to need to know what's going on inside that software, and we're going to need to tweak it, and we're going to need to fix it every now and again. And then finally, imagine a time when AI is developing. Let's say these people are correct, and AI is developing everything and writing all the books, textbooks, novels, everything. What do you think people are going to look for? Right? I mean, I can take an AI like ChatGPT and say, write me a novel in the style of Michael Crichton, the late Michael Crichton, the guy who wrote Jurassic Park. And it'll probably do that. But you think people are going to be content with that? People are going to be content with off-the-shelf AI-generated stuff? Or there's going to be a sudden resurgence of human-developed content, art that is done by a human hand, software that's written that is unique because it is written by a human. It's backed up with the creativity, the intelligence of a human being. So I think there's always going to be a place for AI, but humans are going nowhere. Human developers, human writers, human artists are going nowhere. This is going to be, there's going to be a balancer coming up somewhere in the future. Okay, so I just wanted to get that off my chest. We'll have a more detailed discussion about that in the next few weeks. And I just want to tell you guys what's going to be happening in the next few weeks. As of this month, later this month, we are starting to bring in professional software developers, software engineers, IT professionals, database engineers, AI engineers into the webinar as my guests so that they can talk to you about their work, their experiences, and you can ask them your questions. So many of these are colleagues of mine, many of them are students of mine, and I'm bringing them in for your benefit so that you can ask them to your heart's content all your questions. And what's great is many of them are, well, almost all of them are high rankers in their companies that they work for. So it's an opportunity for you guys to network with them also. So for example, the first guest is going to be one of the senior data analysts at Takealot. For those of you who are South African, you'll know Takealot is the major e-commerce company in the country and Amazon's biggest competitor in this country. So the chief data analyst, the chief database administrator, one of the chief database administrators will be talking to you in a couple of weeks' time. So that's going to be super exciting. But that is not today's topic. Today's topic is about the flow of data through a software system, through a modern software system. Now, to do that, I'm going to share my screen with you guys, as usual. First, let me find that screen before I can share it. Let's start. Okay. Are you guys able to see the IT Varsity logo? Give me a thumbs up. Fantastic. Right. Now, what we're going to be looking at is actually APIs and the MVC framework. Don't worry about that too much. If you don't really understand any of that, I'm going to explain it to you. Now, I want you to understand something when we are using any software. So let's take an easy example, right? Let's say you are working with an e-commerce. Since we spoke about Takealot earlier, you're working with an e-commerce website on your phone. Let's say you are on Takealot or you are Amazon and you are purchasing something. Now, when you look at that app, there are actually three parts to it. The one part is the front end, the view, the part that you are interacting with as a user, the website, the app. The next part is the back end. And I'll explain to you why I've got this chef guy here, right? And then the final part is the data storage, where the data is actually stored. Now, let me give you an example, a real world example before we proceed. You walk into a food outlet, a KFC, for example. The first person you encounter is going to be this person, right? In fact, the only person you're going to encounter is the person at the counter. You're going to walk into the front end of the store. You're going to look at all the things that are in the front end. You're going to see the smiling faces of the staff and the beautiful costumes. You're going to see the menus. You're going to see the cash point, the queuing system. And you'll promptly follow that system, look at what you want to buy, place your order, make payment, and then you'll wait one side until you get a notification that your food is ready. You pick up your parcel and you leave. Now that is, in technical terms, in software terms, that is the front-end experience, the user experience that you are having with that business. And the entire experience is sort of designed to wrap around you as the user. The overall aesthetic of the place, the instructions, the clear menus, the pricing, the place where you have to queue, the screen that shows you that your order is in preparation or it's ready. All of that is for your convenience as the user. And you go in and you interact with that with the business using this front end. Now imagine if that front end wasn't to your expectations, it wasn't to your liking. If you went in there and the place was dirty and it didn't have proper aesthetic appeal and there was dead bugs lying everywhere, would you buy from there? No ways. You would make a U-turn, you do a 180-degree, and you'd walk away. In the same way, if you went in there and the staff were completely unfriendly and they treated you, like you're a problem rather than a customer. Now, you'll never buy from there. Or if the menus were confusing, or if they showed you one price on the menu and they charged you a different price at the till point. Now, all of these things would make for a negative user experience, a negative customer experience. So that's why these stores spend so much of time and effort on that beautiful user experience. They want you to buy, they want you to be happy, and they want you to come back as a repeat customer. Now, in the exact same way, when a person is using an app that you build, there is the front end of that app, the website or the app, the mobile app. Now, if that experience that the user has over there is a good one, then you can be sure that there's going to be repeat business from them. And if that experience has to be a horrible one, then you're going to lose customers. So the view of your app is like the front end of the KFC store. Now, once you've placed your order, where does that order go to? Obviously, it goes to the kitchen in the back end. Now, the kitchen is the part that we generally cannot see, or we'll only see parts of it, but not all of it. And that's the place where your food is prepared, your order is processed. Now, the kitchen doesn't have to be as good looking or as smart as the front end, but it has to be something else. It has to be efficient. It has to be super efficient so that, number one, what they deliver is accurate, is correct. And number two, that it's made to perfection. Number three, that it's made in a timely fashion. Now, what do I mean? What I mean is, if that you place an order and something comes back from the kitchen that is nothing like what you ordered, that's a source of frustration. So you ordered a burger, but you get a piece of chicken. That is a source of frustration. Or you get your burger, but there are things missing inside the burger. There's no sauce, for example. Or like in the case of one of my friends, he ordered a burger and he ordered a wrap from a chicken outlet, and that wrap came with absolutely no chicken inside. So he was quite shocked. It was a chicken wrap that had no chicken inside it. Or if that order took like half an hour. So all of these are going to be sources of frustrations. So the kitchen in the back end it needs to be super efficient. And of course, where does the kitchen get all of its ingredients from? It gets its ingredients from the freezers or the storage that's in the back end. This is the part you never see now. So what's going to happen? You ordered a burger. The chef goes into the freezer, gets out a patty. He goes into the bread storage. He brings in the bun. He goes into the vegetable storage, brings in the tomatoes and the gherkins and the lettuce or whatever, compiles your burger, cooks it, compiles it, and sends it. So everything is stored there. Now, in software development terms, this is what's happening with your applications. Your users interact with the front end. That is called the view, or traditionally was called the view, and I'll tell you why that is changing now. The view interacts with the controller of your app. The controller is the main processing hub of your app. It's the part of your application that sits on the back end where all the business logic takes place. Now that business logic interacts finally with the database where all the data is stored. Now let's take the example of an e-commerce system. So user uses the front end, the view, the app, the front end, the website to make a purchase. The purchase is received by the controller, the business logic center, the back-end application. That back-end application now will go to the database and check for stocks. If there are stocks available, it will make that item available to the user. The moment the user makes a payment and reserves that item, the controller part of the app then goes back to the database and says, knock off one item from your records because somebody has made a purchase. And then the controller sends an instruction to the dispatch team that item XYZ has been ordered by a user, please dispatch it this morning. Now, the controller, as you can see, the chef, the guy that's standing there with his spatula in hand, is called the controller in software systems for a reason. He's the guy that sits like the policeman in the middle and manages all traffic between the customer, the back end, the database, the dispatch crew, accounting team, you name it. So this guy is the main part of the application. Now, traditionally, we wrote applications like this. They were very tightly integrated applications when there was what we call a view, a controller, and a model. The model is the part that handles all the data of your application. Unfortunately, in the past, well, fortunately, since the rise of mobile, especially around 2008 when the iPhone came out, things changed dramatically because now, instead of having one access point to an application, we suddenly had multiple access points. So a user could, for example, shop on Amazon or Takealot on their computer, or they could use their mobile phones, or both sometimes. Sometimes the user would be sitting at their computer and browsing, and then they would go and sit on the couch and continue browsing on their phones, and then leave the phone and then go to the bed, for example, relax in bed, take out the tablet PC and continue browsing there. So whereas in the old days, and I'm talking about 1990s, early 2000s, there was only one access point to the back end, which was your computer and your browser. And so the browser and the back end application were tightly interlocked, which was fine. You had your view, you had your controller, you had your model. That was how software was written. But with mobile, now there are multiple different ways to access that back-end application that's sitting there. So how did we deal with that? How did we deal with that situation? Simple. We dealt with it by creating a separation between the front end and the back end, right? So see this area here, the front end and the back end. Let me just get your chats. Guys, if you have any questions, anything you're unclear about, ask away in the chats. I just opened the chat box here. Right, so we created a separation between the front end and back end. So we cut them apart. And I'm going to show you what that looks like now. Sorry, all these arrows are just appearing in their own times. Right, now what we did was we created this thing in the middle called an API. The API became the central point of communication between the front end and the back end. So we separated them completely, and in between them, to facilitate communication, we created this thing called an API. And the API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's a fancy name, but I don't even know what the name means. But basically, the API serves as the teller in a bank. It's a super secure environment where people, the public, can come in and interact with the bank. Obviously, you can't go into the back end of the bank. You can't go into the vault. You can't go into the sensitive areas where the money and the data and all of those things are kept. What you need to do is go and talk to the teller. And the teller is a super secure area of the bank. And you can have a limited number of interactions with that teller through a series of forms, right? So you fill in a form and say, I want certain things to happen. I want to either deposit money, or I want to withdraw money, or I want to make a change to my account, etc., etc. Now I'm talking about a physical bank here. So the API serves that purpose, and it became the main interaction point between front end and back end. So your front end applications, your browser, your website, your apps communicated via the cloud to this API. They never have direct access to the back end app. Here's the back end sitting there, super secure, hidden behind the API. It's locked away. No one should ever be able to access from the front end to the back end directly anymore. Yes, that was the way of doing it in the past. But today, all this communication must be channeled through an API. Even if you're building a simple application today, you will build it using an API, because who knows, your app will grow and you will need more access points into that API, into the backend of your application. You guys are following so far. Give me a thumbs up if you are understanding, or ask me a question if you are not really keeping up. Cool, fantastic. Thanks a lot. Right. Now, what's the other reason for having this API? Simple. In the old days, like I said, between the front end and the back end of your application, there was a very tight integration. Now, let me give it to you in technical language. Let's say you wrote an application in the back end, and the way to access it was via the browser. You exposed a website, and that website was beautifully written with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that website, through your MVC framework, model, view, controller website, it spoke to the back end, and there was this beautiful flow between the front end of your app and your back end. Now, what if you decided that you needed to, and your clients came up to you and they said, look, we like working via the browser, but we'd like to also work with your app on the go. In other words, we'd like to have mobile access and not through the browser. We want an app for more efficiency in interacting with your application. We love the application, but we want to go mobile now. Okay, so now you want to build a mobile app. Now you immediately got a problem. Why? The problem is, as a developer now, is that your front end, the way you've designed it in the old-fashioned style, you've created a tight link between the front end and the back end. They are married together. They are tight. They are integrated. There was no API. Now what you have to do is rewrite your application to separate front end from back end, place an API, and then allow your computer to access and your mobile app to access that API. You see what's happening here now? You're giving yourself extra work. But had you designed that API, designed your app with an API to begin with, it would simply mean adding another access point. Okay. Now I'm going to take this a little further now that you guys understand this. So keep this picture in mind. And let's get into the details of it. Now, when you are writing your, and this is where we get to the crux of it now. Your front ends are typically written with technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And if you're writing mobile apps, I didn't put that here. If you're creating mobile apps, then you'd use languages like Swift, or you'd use React or Angular to make those mobile apps, right? And that front end is written with that technology. Then via the cloud, they use HTTP protocol. This is universal now. So you will learn about HTTP protocols. Now, your app and your front end will use those HTTP protocols. Now, what are HTTP protocols? They are hypertext transfer protocols, basically a set of rules that you need to use when you are communicating via the internet effectively. They give you standardization, they give you security, they give you expected results, what you put in, what you get out, that kind of result. Now, to give you a real world analogy of the old days, when you wanted to send a letter to somebody, you needed to fold up that letter, put it into an envelope, put a stamp, write the address, and send it off. In that way, you would be sure that that letter would reach its intended destination. In a similar way, your HTTP protocols do that. When you send a request, when you send some information from the front end of your app to the API, if you do it following these protocols, following these rules, abiding by these rules, you can be 100% sure your data will reach the right place. And if you don't do it correctly, then you will get unexpected results, right? So then your front end will send a request via HTTP to the API. Now, APIs might sound complicated, but they are actually very simple. APIs have only 5 functions: get, post, put, delete, and patch. Well, there are others, but those are very rarely used, right? So what does this mean? What do these functions mean? Simple. It's exactly what the word says, get. So let's say you open up your mobile browser, all right? And you open up Amazon. Okay, I've got Amazon opened up on my app. Now you can see, this is the Audible app. Let's open up Amazon. Right. Now you can see I've been doing some book shopping here, right? And there's a whole list of books that I've called up by category. I was looking for some science fiction to read. Okay. Now, how did that appear there? How did the browser know that I wanted this? Simple. I sent a request from my mobile phone via the API, and I used a get. See, I as the user didn't do any of this, right? All this is happening behind the scenes. So the Amazon website sent a GET request to Amazon's backend. And what was the GET request? The GET request was get all science fiction books written by a specific author. Okay. So then that API received that GET request, and then it saw the GET request was all in order. When that was checked, it sent that request to the back end. Now, the back end could have been written in any of these languages: Java, Python, .NET, PHP, or lots of other languages, right? But these are the main languages that you will probably come across. So the GET request was sent to the back end controller. The controller said, okay, right, this is what the user wants. Fantastic. Then it went to the database. It went to the database. Now, I don't know what Amazon's database is built on. I'm guessing PostgreSQL, but I don't know. They all run on the AWS cloud. You guys can research that if you want. Any case, all the books with the descriptions, the images, the user reviews, all of that information is stored in the database. So now the back end hits the database and says, please send me all books that were written by Michael Crichton in the science fiction category. So right, the database will send that information to the back-end controller of the app, this guy here, right? The back-end. The back-end receives that data, and then he, oops, oh God, I'm not very good at this, am I? Everything just went away. Give me a second, I'll go back there. I'm going to share my screen again. Sorry about that, guys. Right. So that information from the database is received by the backend controller. Now, the backend controller will package this information. See what's happening. There's a process of packaging this information into a format that can be sent back to the front end. And that package is known as JSON, JavaScript Object Notation. So the JSON package is sent back to the API, and the API sends it via the HTTP protocols back to the front end. And the front end of your application will now receive what is known as a JSON array, and it will unpack that JSON array, and it will put them into the beautiful format that you are seeing on the screen here. So what your front end application is doing now is that it's interpreting the JSON array, and it knows, because it's been programmed by you, to put everything into its proper place, into the display, so the user can easily view it and scroll, and then certain things are hyperlinked. So I can, if I'm like, okay, I want to read more about this book, Pines, I touch it, so that page opens up, and I can get more information about the book. I can get user reviews. All of that came to your app via that API, wrapped up as a JSON array. So think of that JSON array as a parcel, a beautifully structured, ordered parcel with an address that's moving back and forth between your front end all the way to the back end of your application. And that's how the data flows through your application. Let's look at it one more time, and then we'll open up for questions and for a conversation. Right. The user makes a request by interacting with the app. That request is converted into JSON, and then it is passed via HTTP protocols through the cloud, through the internet, to the API. The API receives that request, sees that it is correct, it's correctly structured, it has a proper address, it knows where to go, it has proper instructions, and it has the proper data. Once that is correct, it sends that to the controller, the back end of the application. That back end of the application now will open up that package and look at what is requested. Then, based on the instructions in there, it will make a request to the database. The database will receive that request, send back some data. Right, that data will come back to the controller. The controller will receive that data, check if it's correct. If it is correct, it will repackage that data as a JSON array. I beg your pardon. And then it will send that JSON array via the API through the cloud back to the front end. The front end of your application will open up that package now. And you see, okay, I requested books by Michael Crichton, science fiction books by Michael Crichton. Here they are. Okay. And it'll take the different parts of that JSON array and display it differently. So the one part, for example, will be title. Okay, title will be displayed differently. thumbnail displayed differently, user review displayed differently, brief description displayed differently. Now that's you in your front end, in your HTML, CSS, and CSS and JavaScript, coding your app to structure the front end in that way, using the data that was received from the back end. And then to give you a sense of the languages that are used, in case some of you might have been wondering, what's all these different languages? Are they just different ways of doing the same thing? No, they're not. Not always the case, right? Your front ends are typically written with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? If you're looking at technologies like React and Angular, those are also JavaScript technologies. Or you could go native like Swift if you're writing for iOS. Then you need to learn a little bit about HTTP protocols, which we will teach you. Then you'll need to learn about API methods, which we will teach you. Again, these four: get, post, put, delete, patch. Now, I didn't explain to you the others. Post is to send. Now, you know when you post something on social media, guess which API function the app is using? You named it, post. Put is to make a change to one of the arrays. So for example, let's say you made a post, a social media post, and you want to edit that post. You typically use put. Or delete. You want to delete a post, that's how you delete. Patch, if you want to fix just one part of the post, then you typically use patch. Now, patch and put are very close to each other, but I don't want to go into the details. We'll come to that at a later stage. So you will learn all of this. Then the language, and this is why I say the language is the least important part of your software development journey. Most of you might have been very surprised when I said that. Maybe I said that to you in our consultations, but I say this a lot. Guys, language is the least important, right? You can see it only performs one aspect. Everything else from the front end to the back end is also crucially important. And all of this, trust me when I tell you, is standardized. No matter what language you are using, Java, Python, oh God, I did it again, didn't I? Oh, there we are. Whether using Java, Python, .NET, PHP, you name it. The front end cloud API, all the same. Database, all the same. You are simply creating the controller of your app using this language. And you will also be so shocked in later months when I speak to you about how similar the applications that you might write in Java versus an application you might write in Python versus .NET versus PHP, how similar they are. The only differences you'll find is slight syntactic differences, but when you look at the overall structure as a software engineer, you see, hey, these are the same. These are almost identical. For example, when you send a request to the API, the first class that the API talks to you in your application is known as the controller class. Now, if you look at a controller class that's written in Java or Python or .NET or PHP, you'll see they are almost identical. Again, syntactically, there's differences, but in structure, they are identical. So you don't need to worry too much about the languages. Languages come and go. But you need to understand this structure here. If you understand this structure, front end, back end, obviously you go into more and more levels of detail, which I'm not going to go into here, because I've gone like way over time, then you will understand that what software development, back-end, full stack development is all about. And if you understand this, then you will be a truly good software developer. So if you go into a Java environment, other than just the Java language, you will understand what the application is. Without even anybody explaining to you, you just need to look at the controller class and you'll know. Or you look at the API methods and you say, okay, right, I know what this application is like. And if you have to switch from Java to Python, then it's an easy transition because you understand the structure. Now, the problem with most institutes and most YouTube videos and all is that the focus is on the language. They teach you a language, they teach you to do things with one language. At IT Varsity, we don't teach you that. We teach you how to do things, no matter what language you're using. So you can extrude and you can be a truly good software developer, no matter what language environment you find yourself in. So you can be a chameleon in the software development world. You can switch between languages very easily. And I do that. I used to do that constantly. Okay, let me go into your comments. So Keenan says, so will we be doing both front end and back end development, or will we be doing everything from front end to database? Everything, Keenan. For those of you who are doing Java and Python, you will be doing front end to API, to back end, to database, and back again. You'll be creating, this is what a full stack app is. You'll be creating an app that sends data requests all the way from your HTML code that you are writing. Say you put an HTML form, and you will actually build, one of the first apps you'll build will be a contact book app. So you'll use an HTML form to capture contact information. That contact information will be wrapped as JSON, will hit an API, will go into a back-end application, which you will write, and then it'll be stored in the database, and then you will request your contacts, and then the database will send back the contacts. I think you do that in around about module 9 or 10. So exciting times ahead, guys. So Keenan again, so currently we're learning how to do front-end development, and later on we will move forward and learn them all. Yes, 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 yes. And this is how we start you off. Understand your front end, then understand your APIs, then understand your back end. So you learn it in that order: front end, API, back end. So your learning journey is representative of the journey of the data through your system. So we don't dive in the back end and confuse you. You start with the front end. That's where it starts. Then you go to the APIs. You will write, even as front-end developers, by module 8, I think you will write applications that talk to an API. Yes, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes of that API, but that's not important for you at that point. What's important is the fact that you can write a front-end application that hits that API, and you get expected results back. That's important. Once you can do that, then we remove this curtain here, and we show you what's happening in the back end. Jade says, regarding the Python course, do we learn Python up to an advanced level? I see the course covers WordPress. Is this a popular requirement in the industry, or are we only learning it in terms of utilizing it with Python? So Jade, good questions. See, this is why I don't like words like advanced, because advanced makes no sense to me, right? Yes, what you will learn is full stack Python development, right? So you will learn, I'll tell you exactly what you will learn. Let's say you are focusing on Python. So you are right now, you are learning to build applications using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, basic stuff, right? And that's going to hit that API. Now from that API onwards is Python, right? So the API that you will write will be written in Python, and the whole controller application that you will create will be in Python, and that Python is going to be talking to your database. So it'll receive that information and store it in the database. So you will be using object-oriented Python to communicate with your database, store data into the database, bring the data back. And then your Python application will now repackage that data into JSON array. For most, as far as most descriptions goes, well, college descriptions, that is advanced Python development. You get it? Now, we don't make that distinction because it's such a subjective description. We teach you the actual application, but in layers. In terms of WordPress, the WordPress is there as a value add for you guys. We need you guys to learn WordPress because your portfolio website will most likely, you'll most likely build it in WordPress. We put a very strong emphasis on you guys building up portfolio websites of your own. Whether you are a junior or a senior person, senior developer, keep a portfolio website because that's more important than your CV. because that is a record of all the work that you've done. And it's more important than your social media presence in a way also, because it's the central point where you share your progress with the world. Okay. So Sabira's question, do both software development courses deal with front end, back end? Yes. Because if you have to know both to be a good, solid developer. I mean, we do have a front end development course, but again, we also teach them some back end technologies so that they understand what's going on behind the scenes, right? So as you can see, I want you guys to appreciate something here. I want you guys to appreciate that how different IT Varsity's approach is to other colleges. You know, other colleges might tell you, right, we'll teach you in a year, we'll teach you beginner Java, beginner Python, intermediate Java, intermediate Python. What is that? That made no sense to me as a software engineer. For me, it's either you can build a full stack application or you can't. I don't care what you call yourself, beginner, intermediate, advanced. I don't know what that is. But can you build a front-end application? Do you understand the flow of data through the system? The moment the user hits that submit form on an HTML document, do you know what's going on there? Do you know that that form is being wrapped, the form data is being captured, being wrapped as a JSON array, is being transferred by HTTP protocols to an API. The API talks to the backend of the application, which unpacks the JSON array, objectifies it, puts it into object form, takes that object, transfers it to the model classes. The model classes takes that, puts it into a database ready format, and it's stored into the database. And then a message comes back, a success message comes back through the whole system, from database to backend to API, through the protocols to the app. Success. Your contact has been stored. Your data has been stored. Your information has been posted. If you can do that, you're a developer. If you can't, you're not a developer. That's how simple it is for me. And so that's why our approach at IT Varsity is so radically different. Sabira is a good question. What is better suited for certain people, being a front-end developer or a back-end developer? So Sabira, this is why we give you a full spectrum at IT Varsity. So you can decide at some stage, okay, I know the whole spectrum, this whole map in front of you, front-end cloud API, back-end database. You get a taste of the whole thing. Now you can make that decision at the end and say, look, I just love this front-end stuff. I love the design. I love the user, creating user experiences. That works for me. Or like our guest that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time, you could say, hell, I love the database stuff. Now, me personally, I love the back-end stuff. I experienced the whole journey, and I settled on the back-end stuff. But some people become database administrators because they love working with large volumes of data. And I did that at one stage in my life, and I didn't like it. I hated it. I found it excessively boring because it was devoid of any logic, any coding logic. So long story short, Sabira, you will make that decision yourself. We give you the exposure so that you can make a decision. And there's nothing wrong with choosing front-end, back-end, or database. These are all highly, highly lucrative, highly rewarding careers. So Nabia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Nabia or Nabia. Morning, sir. If you don't manage to complete the course this year, we'll be allowed to complete it next year. Yes, you can take your time. We don't impose any time periods, although we recommend not more than 2 years. It is a 1-year course, not 2 years, not more than 18 months, and not less than 6 months. But it's up to you. Take your time. I know many of you are in full-time jobs also. Main thing is to understand, not to blaze through the course, and not to memorize everything. It's to understand everything. Keenan says, okay, he's advertising the WhatsApp group for everyone to join. Fantastic initiative there by Azra. Where is Azra around today? Nobody scribbled on my slides. Okay, maybe she's not around. Sabira says, what is better suited for certain people? Oh, I already went through that. Subhan says, all these languages is what makes a complete and professionally functioning website, whilst what we are doing now with HTML, CSS is just the basics. It's not the basics, Subhan. It's not, I see again, I wouldn't call it the basics. I would call it the front end element of the application. And like I said, once you master that, next you will master the API, then you'll master the back end. So you're going to master 3 major components as you're going along in this journey with us. And I hope you're going to enjoy the journey, because I thoroughly enjoyed making this course for you guys. So Jade says, how long does it normally take to students to complete the first part of the course? The entire thing is 1 year, the entire thing. So think about it like this. There's a lot of emphasis on the front end stuff. So I would say for the first 6 months, you will focus on back end, front end. Next 3 months will be API, and the final 3 months will be your back end stuff. Oh, Azra says, I'm here. Good. Keenan, so how long did it take you and your team to design the lessons for each course? Oh my God, this is such a, I think we'll have a separate session on how we designed Aptopreneur. It wasn't, well, Aptopreneur was the forefather to these courses that you guys are doing. We discontinued that one, but how we designed that. You see, we started out with this journey. And we decided to do a rethink rather than follow what every other college does, which you say, okay, I want to be a Java developer. What's the first thing they teach you? Java. No, we decided to rethink that. We decided to look at it from a developer's perspective. What are you going to develop, and how and when are you going to develop? And so we came up with this whole thing, but that's a whole journey in itself. And look, in terms of how long, I would say it took me about 10 years to get it to longer. It took me about 14 years to get it to where it is, because every year we do a review of the course. We call it the TikTok. Well, this was before even TikTok came out as an app. So in 1 year, we'll do a major revamp. And in the second year, we'll do a major revamp, minor improvement. Aisha's question is, user experience and user interface both part of front-end development? Yes, and both very crucial parts of front-end development and extremely rewarding. In fact, next year we are releasing an entire qualification in user experience design. We've already got our subject matter expert. This guy's been doing it for the past 10, 15 years, and he's a genius, a guru in user interface and user experience design. So for me, that's crucially important. Also, how long does it normally take for a professional front-end developer to create a website like Pine City Mall app? Well, that's if you develop Pine City Mall, how long it took you is how long it takes a developer. So, but the developer will be doing it a little more quickly because they'll be using certain frameworks and certain tools that you are not exposed to right now. Right now, what you are doing is you're writing raw HTML and CSS from the ground up. Why do we make you do that? Simple. Understand your languages before you understand your frameworks. That's something I believe in. Go to YouTube, you'll see endless debates about that. Learn the framework first, then learn the language, Listen to me, learn the language. For example, React, right? If you want to learn React, learn JavaScript first. Learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript first, then learn React, because React is a JavaScript framework or library. Learn and understand that, because your understanding of React will be much more solid because you understand JavaScript. Musfira's question, will our learning include data analysis and data science, or will it only cover front end and back development. Correct. You will not study data analysis and data science at all. Those are completely different fields. We will be introducing an entire qualification in data science, which also includes data analytics, but that's completely different from what you guys are going to be doing. You guys, you see, there's a difference here, right? The developers generally work on the front end, cloud, API, back end, and to an extent, to a small extent, database. Your involvement with the database ends with storing and retrieving information from the database. But the data analysts, their lives revolve around the database. They live there. They don't move out from there. They're not interested in your backend applications and your APIs and everything. They are only interested in that database. It's an interesting type of job. So they use the data in the database to extract all kinds of data and information and draw pictures and use machine learning algorithms to extrude patterns and things. Very, very exciting. We will be introducing a qualification in data science next year. This year, we've got our hands full with production for you guys because there's a major revamp of Java, Python, .NET, or, well, not .NET. We will be introducing .NET, but we just don't have the time to do that. We're such a small team. Okay, we are up to 11:56. Wow, I was supposed to finish at 11:30. You guys really keep me intrigued. We've got 4 more questions. Let's get 4 more minutes. Let's get at least 1 more question. So Sabira's question, since you get both front end and back end development, does a software engineer always work in a team? No, you don't always work in a team, but you generally work in a team. There are times when you will work alone. For example, if you are doing freelance work, you will work alone, but it's always better to work in a team so that each person in the team can focus on what they do best. And it's always best for each person in the team to have a bit of understanding of the work of the others. So there is more team understanding, empathy, and efficiency. So if you're the front-end developer, for example, don't be so front-end that you have no idea what's going on in the back end. Understand what's going on in the back end. So I'll give you an example. A friend of mine developed a Checker 6060 app. This guy was very front-end, and he had no say in what was going on in the back end. And it was a nightmare for him because the information that he gets from the back end was like tons and tons of irrelevant data that he had to deal with. And so it became very difficult for him. But where both are working together, then it makes for a much more efficient app. Jade says, please advise how the revamp of the Python course will change the... It won't. There's no revamp that you guys will notice in the Python course. Nabia says, can we do the video presentation last? No, Nabia, it's there for a reason. It's there in that module for a reason. But if you have some difficulty about it, speak to the support team. They will help you. The idea is to break you guys out of that. And I'm speaking from experience here. You guys think, wow, this guy Bilal is such an awesome speaker. He can go and talk in front of so many people. And I was a massive introvert, and that was working against me in my career. I need you guys to get out of that. It's part of my mentorship to you to make you come out of your comfort zone. Keenan says, is there a chance that any of us would be joining your team by working for you? Yes, definitely. You will work with us. Some of you will work with us. Some of you will go into the Caitlin project. Caitlin is the AI that we are building. Some of you will go into our LMS projects, but only temporarily. We don't like to keep you guys as permanent fixtures. We love to be a launch pad for you. Like so many of our developers that went to work, most recently was Adam, who went to work for Amazon. He was working on our Xander app project. Cool, guys. We are up to 12 o'clock, and as much fun as I'm having, I'm going to have to say thank you and bid thee farewell. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.